The smell of turpentine and betrayal hung thick in my garage that Tuesday night. I should have known something was wrong when Ivy started wearing perfume to her girls' nights out. Hell, I should have known when she bought those red stilettos that cost more than my monthly paint budget. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name's Darren Locke, and I've been painting houses in this godforsaken coastal town of Millbrook, Maine, for 23 years. Not the artistic kind of painting, the kind that keeps roofs over heads and food on tables, the kind that leaves your hands permanently stained and your back permanently bent. At 45, I figured I'd seen every shade of human ugliness this town had to offer. I was wrong. "Another late night, honey," Ivy had said that evening, checking her phone for the 100th time. At 27, she still had that restless energy that made her bounce from job to job, friend to friend, and apparently, bed to bed. "Jenna's having another crisis. You know how she gets." I knew how Jenna got, all right. The woman collected drama like I collected paint samples, but something in Ivy's voice made me look up from the primer I was mixing. She was already dressed to impress, literally, as it turned out, in a black dress that hugged every curve and those damned red heels that clicked like a countdown timer across our hardwood floors. "Sure thing, sweetheart," I'd said, not looking up. "Say hi to the girls for me." The thing about being married to someone 18 years younger is that you spend a lot of time feeling obsolete, like a rotary phone in an iPhone world. Ivy never said it directly, but I could feel it in the way she'd roll her eyes when I mentioned my army days, or how she'd change the subject when her friends asked what I did for work. So there I was, alone in my garage at 10 p.m., brush in hand, thinking about how quiet the house felt without her constant chatter and phone notifications. That's when I got the wild idea to visit my son Caleb. Real father-son bonding time, maybe over a couple of beers and some takeout Chinese. Caleb lived in one of those converted warehouse apartments downtown, the kind that looked trendy in magazines but felt like a concrete tomb in real life. At 23, he was still figuring himself out, bouncing between warehouse jobs and community college classes. He'd inherited my stubborn streak and his mother's tendency to overthink everything. I grabbed a six-pack from the fridge and drove through the drizzle that seemed to be Millbrook's permanent weather setting. The streets were mostly empty except for the usual collection of tourists stumbling between bars and locals hurrying home from second jobs. Caleb's building had that new construction smell mixed with something that might have been mold. I climbed 3 flights of stairs, my knees reminding me that I wasn't 25 anymore, and knocked on his door. "Dad?" His voice came through the door, surprised and maybe a little panicked. "What are you doing here?" "Brought beer," I called back. "Figured we could hang out, maybe order some food." There was a long pause. Too long. The kind of pause that makes your gut clench even when your brain hasn't caught up yet. Now's not really a good time." "Come on, kid. When is it ever a good time for family?" I heard whispering inside. Low voices, urgent tones. My hand was already reaching for the doorknob when it turned from the inside. Caleb opened the door, wearing nothing but boxer shorts and a guilty expression that could have lit up the whole building. His hair was messed up, his face flushed. Behind him, I could see into his tiny living room. That's when I saw them. Those red stilettos, Ivy's signature shoes, the ones she'd bought for special occasions, sitting right there by Caleb's couch like they owned the place. My brain went through about 6 different explanations in the space of a heartbeat. Maybe she'd loaned them to someone. Maybe they belonged to some other woman who happened to have identical taste in overpriced footwear. Maybe I was having some kind of stress-induced hallucination. Then Ivy walked out of Caleb's bedroom. She was wearing a black lace teddy I'd never seen before, and an expression of pure, undiluted panic. Her hair was tousled, her lipstick smeared, and she was clutching a silk robe that wasn't doing much to preserve anyone's dignity. The three of us stood there in a tableau that would have been funny if it wasn't destroying my life. Father, son, and wife. One big, happy family. "Dad, I can explain," Caleb started. "Darren, this isn't what it looks like," Ivy said at the same time. I held up my hand, and they both went quiet. The beer bottles clinked together as I shifted the six-pack from one arm to the other. Somewhere in the building, a TV was playing too loud, and I could hear the couple upstairs arguing about money. "You know what?" I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I always wondered if the kid inherited my taste in shoes. Guess it runs in the family." I turned around and walked away, just like that. No shouting, no violence, no dramatic confrontation. I walked down those 3 flights of stairs with my beer and my dignity intact, while behind me I could hear urgent whispers and the sound of someone crying. It wasn't until I got to the parking lot that I realized I was shaking. I sat in my truck for a long time, staring up at Caleb's lit window and trying to process what I'd just seen. 20 years of marriage, 23 years of being a father, all of it recontextualized in the space of 30 seconds. My phone buzzed. A text from Ivy. "Where are you? Girls' night ended early. Coming home soon." I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I started the engine and drove home through streets that suddenly felt foreign, like I'd been dropped into someone else's life. The house looked the same peeling paint on the shutters, same overgrown hedge I kept meaning to trim, same porch light that flickered when the wind was right. But everything was different now. I sat in my truck in the driveway and watched the house where I'd lived for 15 years. The house where Ivy and I had made plans and shared dreams and built what I'd thought was a life together. The house where she'd been lying to my face while screwing my son. That's when I noticed Ivy's phone buzzing on the passenger seat. She must have left it when she grabbed her purse earlier. The screen lit up with notifications, and I could see the preview of the latest message from Jenna. "Don't let him find out. Delete everything." I picked up the phone and scrolled through the messages. What I found there made my stomach turn and my hands shake with something that wasn't grief anymore. It was rage. Pure, cold, calculating rage. And for the first time in 20 years, I knew exactly what I was going to do about it. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with Ivy's phone, a pot of coffee, and a yellow legal pad, documenting every lie my wife had told me over the past 6 months. The text messages painted a picture that was somehow worse than what I'd witnessed. This wasn't some sudden moment of weakness or a recent betrayal born of marital problems. This had been going on for months. Careful planning, elaborate deceptions, and worst of all, they'd been laughing about it. "Your dad is so clueless," one message from Ivy to Caleb read. "He actually believes I'm at book club tonight." "Old man never suspects a thing," Caleb had replied. "Too busy with his paint cans to notice what's happening in the real world." There were dozens of messages like that, mocking my age, my work, my trusting nature. They'd turned my love for my family into a punchline. But the messages revealed something else too. I wasn't the only one being deceived. Ivy had been seeing someone else as well, someone named Liam who owned a classic car restoration shop downtown. The messages suggested she was playing both men, telling each of them what they wanted to hear while keeping her options open. "Caleb's sweet, but he's broke," she'd texted Jenna. "Liam has money, but he's possessive. I need to figure out which one's worth keeping." I made careful notes, took screenshots, and cross-referenced everything with my own calendar and bank statements. Ivy's girls' nights corresponded perfectly with Caleb's days off from the warehouse. Her shopping trips lined up with afternoons when Liam's shop was closed for inventory. By sunrise, I had a complete timeline of my wife's infidelity, documented with the same attention to detail I brought to estimating paint jobs. The front door opened just as I was finishing my 3rd cup of coffee. "Honey?" Ivy's voice carried that artificially bright tone she used when she was nervous. You're up early." She walked into the kitchen still wearing the black dress from the night before, though she'd thrown a cardigan over it. Her makeup was smeared, and she smelled like cheap cologne and guilt. "Couldn't sleep," I said, without looking up from my notes. "Coffee's fresh if you want some." "Thanks, baby." She moved around the kitchen with exaggerated casualness, opening cabinets and rearranging things that didn't need rearranging. "How was your night? Did you do anything fun?" "Visited Caleb," I said, still not looking at her. She went very still. I could feel her staring at the back of my head, trying to read my expression. "Oh?" Her voice was carefully neutral. "How's he doing?" "Seemed busy, didn't stay long." "That's too bad. You two should spend more time together." I finally looked up at her then. She was standing by the sink, gripping her coffee mug like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her face was pale beneath her smeared makeup. "You left your phone in my truck," I said, sliding it across the table to her. She grabbed it quickly, clutching it to her chest. "Thanks. I was looking everywhere for this." "I bet you were." We stared at each other across the kitchen table. 20 years of marriage condensed into one loaded moment. She knew that I knew, and I knew that she knew that I knew, but neither of us was ready to say it out loud yet. "I'm going to shower," she said finally. "Good idea. You smell like someone else's cologne." She flinched like I'd slapped her, but she didn't deny it. She just turned and walked out of the kitchen, her heels clicking against the hardwood with each step. I waited until I heard the shower running, then I got to work. First, I called the bank. As the primary account holder, I had the right to remove Ivy's access to our joint checking and savings accounts. I transferred everything to a new account in my name only, leaving just enough in the joint account to cover the automatic payments for utilities and insurance. Next, I called my lawyer, Jim Morrison, not the late rock star, but a heavy-set guy who specialized in divorce cases and had an office above the hardware store. I'd painted his house 3 years ago, and we'd stayed friendly. "Darren? Christ, it's not even 8 a.m. What's the emergency?" "I need to file for divorce, Jim, and I need to do it right." There was a pause. "Ivy?" "Ivy and my son, together, I've got evidence." Another pause, longer this time. "Jesus, Darren, I'm sorry, man. Can you be here in an hour? Bring everything you've got." I spent the next 40 minutes making copies of everything. Bank statements, phone records, photographs of the timeline I'd created. By the time Ivy came downstairs, I was already dressed and heading for the door. "Where are you going?" she asked. She'd put on makeup to cover the damage from the night before, but her eyes were red and swollen. "Work," I said. "Unlike some people, I've got responsibilities." I left her standing in the kitchen, staring after me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Fear, maybe, or calculation. With Ivy, it was always hard to tell the difference. Jim's office smelled like coffee and legal documents. He listened to my story without interruption, occasionally making notes on his yellow pad. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and whistled low. "This is ugly, Darren. Really ugly. But you've done everything right so far. No confrontations, no violence, just documentation. That's going to serve you well." "What's my next move?" "We file the papers today. Maine's a no-fault state, but adultery still matters when it comes to asset division. With this evidence, you'll keep the house, most of the savings, and probably won't pay alimony. The fact that it's your son—" He shook his head. "That's going to make things complicated." "Complicated how?" "Family court judges have seen everything, but this is going to stick in their craw. Your wife sleeping with your adult child? That's not just adultery, that's psychological warfare. Any judge worth their gavel is going to see this as intentional cruelty." I left Jim's office feeling like I had a plan for the first time since the night before, but I wasn't done gathering intelligence. Millbrook was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone else's business, usually before they knew it themselves. The epicenter of local gossip was Norma's diner, a grease-stained institution that had been serving coffee and rumors for 40 years. Norma herself was a walking encyclopedia of local scandal. She was somewhere north of 60, with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She'd been serving me coffee and eggs for 2 decades, and she had a soft spot for what she called the good ones, men who worked hard and treated people right. "Darren, honey," she said when I walked in around 10 a.m. "You look like hell warmed over. Rough night?" "Something like that." I slid into my usual booth by the window. "Coffee and whatever's good today." She poured coffee without being asked and studied my face with the intensity of a forensic investigator. "This about that young wife of yours?" I looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" "Oh, honey." Norma sat down across from me, which she only did when she had something important to say. "I've been watching that girl for months now, coming in here with different men thinking nobody notices because it's the middle of the afternoon." "Different men?" "That boy of yours, for one. Sweet kid, but he looks at her like she hung the moon. And that Liam character from the car shop, flashy type, all cologne and gold chains. Your wife's got expensive tastes, Darren." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "How long has this been going on?" "Since spring, at least. Maybe longer. I mind my own business usually, but when I see a good man getting played..." She shrugged. "Sometimes a person's got to speak up. Why didn't you say something before? Would you have believed me?" She had a point. 3 days ago, I would have defended Ivy against any accusation. I would have told Norma she was mistaken, that my wife loved me, that my son would never betray me like that. "I'm sorry, honey," Norma said, patting my hand. "I really am. But maybe it's better you know now than later." I spent the rest of the morning driving around town, seeing familiar places with new eyes. The motel by the bay where Ivy claimed she'd never been, but where the desk clerk recognized her description. The parking lot behind Liam's shop where my truck would be invisible from the street. By noon, I had a plan that went beyond just divorce papers and asset protection. Ivy and Caleb had humiliated me, but they'd done it in secret, in shadows, thinking I was too stupid and too trusting to ever figure it out. They were about to learn the difference between stupid and patient. And they were about to discover that the most dangerous person in any situation is the one who has nothing left to lose. The Millbrook Harbor Festival happened every September, turning our sleepy downtown into a carnival of local artists, overpriced lobster rolls, and tourists with cameras. This year, it was also going to be the stage for the most public humiliation in the town's history. I'd spent 2 weeks preparing, 2 weeks of careful planning, strategic positioning, and letting Ivy think she'd gotten away with everything. She'd grown confident in her deception, almost careless. The joint bank account I'd left active had just enough money to make her feel secure, and I'd been playing the role of the oblivious husband with Academy Award-worthy dedication. "You should come to the festival with me," Ivy had suggested that morning, applying lipstick in the hallway mirror. "It might be fun, like old times." "Sure," I'd said, knowing that she was planning to meet Liam there, knowing that Caleb would be working one of the vendor booths, knowing that half the town would be there to witness what was about to happen. "Sounds great." She'd looked surprised. Over the past 2 weeks, I'd been declining her invitations, claiming I was too busy with work or too tired from long days. The truth was, I'd been conducting surveillance. I knew that Liam drove a restored 1967 Mustang that he parked in the same spot behind his shop every day. I knew that Caleb had been skipping his community college classes to spend afternoons at Ivy's book club. I knew that Jenna had been covering for both of them, creating alibis and forwarding messages. Most importantly, I knew that all 3 of them had gotten sloppy. They'd stopped being careful about when and where they met. They'd stopped watching their backs. The festival was in full swing by the time we arrived. Local bands played on a makeshift stage. Artists displayed their work in white tents along the waterfront. and the smell of fried food mixed with salt air and the distant promise of rain. "I'm going to look at the paintings," Ivy said, checking her phone. "Meet you back here in an hour?" "Actually, I think I'll come with you. I could use some inspiration for my own work." She looked trapped. "Oh, well, it might be boring for you. A lot of abstract stuff, you know. Not really your style." "I'm feeling adventurous today." We walked through the festival together, Ivy growing more nervous with each step. She kept checking her phone, sending quick texts when she thought I wasn't looking. I could practically see her mind working, trying to figure out how to ditch me without seeming suspicious. That's when I saw Caleb. He was working at a booth selling handmade jewelry, looking uncomfortable in a button-down shirt that was too small for him. When he saw us approaching, his face went through a series of expressions that would have been comical under different circumstances. "Hey, Dad, Ivy." He couldn't meet either of our eyes. "Caleb," I said warmly, "I didn't know you were working the festival." "Yeah, it's just a day job, helping out a friend." "That's great, son. Good to see you taking initiative." Ivy was practically vibrating with tension beside me. Her phone buzzed constantly, and I could see the edge of panic creeping into her expression. "Well," she said brightly, "I think I'll go get us some drinks. Darren, what would you like?" "I'll come with you," I said. "No." The word came out sharper than she'd intended. "I mean, you two should catch up. Father-son time, right? I'll just be a few minutes." She hurried away before either of us could respond, her heels clicking rapidly against the pavement. I watched her go, then turned back to Caleb. "Nice festival," I said conversationally. Yeah. Your mother would have loved this. She always liked community events." Caleb flinched. His mother, my ex-wife Marge, had been gone for 3 years. Cancer. It had been one of the few things that brought Caleb and me closer together, sharing that grief. "Dad, about the other night." "What about it?" He looked around nervously, as if checking for escape routes. "I know what you saw looked bad, but—" "What did I see, Caleb?" Ivy was just—" "Go ahead, son. Tell me what I saw." He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. The words wouldn't come. How do you explain betraying your father to your father? How do you justify sleeping with his wife? "You know what I think?" I said, leaning against his booth's counter. "I think you've forgotten who you are. I think you've let a pretty woman make you forget that family matters more than anything else in this world." "It's not like that? Then what is it like?" Before he could answer, I saw Ivy returning with drinks, Liam walking beside her. He was exactly what I'd expected from Norma's description: mid-30s, expensive clothes, the kind of confidence that came from never having to work with your hands. He had his arm around Ivy's waist in a gesture that was supposed to look casual, but screamed possession. "Darren," Ivy said, her voice artificially bright. "This is Liam. He owns the classic car place downtown. Liam, this is my husband." Liam extended his hand with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Nice to meet you, man. Ivy's told me a lot about you." I shook his hand, noting the softness of his palm, the expensive watch on his wrist, the way his eyes kept drifting to Ivy like she was a prize he'd already won. "I'm sure she has," I said. "All good things, I hope." "Of course. She says you're a painter." "Houses, mostly. Nothing as fancy as what you do with cars." "Well, we all have our talents." The condescension in his voice was subtle but unmistakable. This was a man who looked down on people like me, who saw manual labor as something beneath him. The fact that he was sleeping with my wife just made it more insulting. "Liam was just telling me about a car show next weekend," Ivy said, her voice too loud, too enthusiastic. "Maybe we could all go together." "That sounds great," I said. "I'd love to see what kind of work Liam does. I'm always interested in craftsmanship." Something in my tone made both of them look at me more carefully. Liam's smile became more forced, and Ivy's hand tightened around her drink. Actually, Liam said, it's probably not your kind of thing. Mostly vintage muscle cars, pretty specialized crowd. Oh, I don't know. I appreciate quality work when I see it. Take Ivy's shoes, for example. I gestured toward her red heels. Those are beautiful, really distinctive, the kind of thing you notice when you see them somewhere unexpected. Ivy went pale. Caleb made a choking sound. I saw a pair just like them the other night, I continued conversationally. In the strangest place. Made me wonder how they got there. Dad, Caleb started. Funny thing about those shoes, I said, still looking at Liam. They're expensive. The kind of thing a woman only wears for special occasions, special people. Liam's smile had completely disappeared. I'm not sure what you're getting at. I'm getting at the fact that my wife's shoes were in my son's apartment while she was supposed to be at book club. The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. Around us, the festival continued. Children laughing, music playing, the normal sounds of people enjoying themselves. But in our little circle, everything had gone quiet. Darren, Ivy said, her voice shaking, you're being ridiculous. I can explain. Can you? Because I'd love to hear the explanation for why you were in Caleb's bedroom wearing nothing but lingerie while texting Jenna about not getting caught. Caleb's face crumpled. Dad, please. Please what? Please pretend I didn't see what I saw? Please keep pretending that my wife isn't sleeping with my son and God knows who else? You don't understand, Ivy said desperately. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. The question is, what are we going to do about it? People were starting to stare. Our voices had gotten louder, and in a small town, public drama was better than cable television. I could see phones coming out, people positioning themselves to get a better view of the show. Maybe we should take this somewhere private, Liam suggested, looking around nervously. Why? I asked. We're all friends here, right? No secrets between friends. That's when Caleb snapped. Shut up, he yelled, his face red with shame and anger. Just shut up, you pathetic old man. You don't know anything. I know my son is a backstabbing piece of garbage who can't keep his hands off his stepmother. Caleb lunged at me across the jewelry booth, scattering handmade earrings and necklaces across the pavement. I sidestepped easily. 23 years of military training don't disappear just because you're holding a paintbrush instead of a rifle. He stumbled, caught himself, and came at me again. This time, I was ready. I grabbed his wrist, twisted it behind his back, and forced him to his knees right there in front of everyone. You want to act like a man? I said, loud enough for the growing crowd to hear. Then be one. Look me in the eye and tell me why you betrayed your own father. Let go of me! Tell them, I said, nodding toward the crowd. Tell all these people what you've been doing. Tell them how you've been screwing your stepmother behind my back. Darren, stop, Ivy pleaded. People are recording this. Good. Let them record it. Let the whole world see what kind of family I've been living with. I released Caleb and stepped back. He stayed on his knees for a moment, breathing hard, then slowly got to his feet. His shirt was torn, his face streaked with tears and snot. I hate you, he whispered. The feeling's mutual, son. I turned to Ivy, who was clutching Liam's arm like it was a life preserver. 20 years, I said. 20 years I loved you, provided for you, treated you like a queen. And this is how you repay me? Darren, if you'd just listen. I'm done listening. I'm done being the fool in this relationship. You want to be with Caleb? Fine. You want to be with Liam? Also fine. But you don't get to have me too. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a manila envelope. Divorce papers, I said, handing them to her. You've been served. The crowd was getting bigger, phones held high, people pushing closer to get a better view. This was going to be all over social media within the hour, and by tomorrow, it would be the talk of the entire town. You can't do this, Ivy said, staring at the papers. I already did. The house is mine. I owned it before we got married. The bank accounts are frozen. Your credit cards are canceled. If you want a roof over your head tonight, I suggest you ask one of your boyfriends. I turned to address the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disturbance, but I thought you should know what kind of people you've been sharing this community with. A woman who cheats on her husband with his own son, and a son who betrays his father for a piece of ass. Dad, don't, Caleb started. Don't what? Don't tell the truth? The truth is that my wife is a whore and my son is a traitor. The truth is that I've been living a lie for months, while everyone in this town probably knew what was going on behind my back. I looked around at the faces in the crowd. Some looked shocked, others embarrassed, a few seemed to be enjoying the show. But I could see in their eyes that I was right. Some of them had known. Some of them had seen Ivy with Caleb, or Ivy with Liam, and they'd said nothing. Well, now you don't have to pretend anymore, I said. Now everyone knows. I walked away then, leaving Ivy holding the divorce papers, Caleb on his knees in the scattered jewelry, and Liam looking like he wished he was anywhere else in the world. Behind me, I could hear Ivy calling my name, her voice breaking with tears that were probably real. But I didn't turn around. I'd said everything I needed to say. The real payback was just beginning. The rain started falling around midnight, turning Millbrook's streets into rivers of reflected neon and regret. I sat in my truck across from Liam's classic car garage, watching water run down the windshield and thinking about justice. The festival had been 3 days ago, and the fallout was everything I'd hoped for and more. The video of Caleb attacking me had gone viral locally. Everyone in town had seen it, shared it, commented on it. Ivy had become a pariah overnight, whispered about in grocery stores and coffee shops. Caleb had lost his job at the warehouse when the owner, a family man himself, decided he didn't want that kind of person representing his business. But I wasn't done. Public humiliation was just the appetizer. Through the rain-streaked window, I could see Liam's pride and joy. A 1967 Mustang Fastback in pristine condition, cherry red with white racing stripes. He'd parked it under the overhang behind his shop, protected from the weather but visible from the alley where I was waiting. I'd been watching his routine for a week. Every night at closing time, he'd walk out to the car, run his hand along the hood like he was petting a beloved dog, then lock up and drive home to his condo on Harbor Street. The man loved that car more than most people loved their children. Tonight was going to be special. My phone buzzed, a text from Ivy. Please call me. We need to talk. I deleted it without responding. She'd been trying to reach me for days, leaving voicemails that ranged from tearful apologies to angry accusations to desperate pleas. I'd listened to exactly one of them, just long enough to hear her blame me for driving her away with my emotional unavailability. 20 years of marriage, and it was my fault she'd slept with my son. The back door of the shop opened, spilling yellow light into the alley. Liam emerged, checking his phone and pulling his jacket collar up against the rain. He walked to the Mustang, performed his usual ritual of running his hands over the paint, then got in and drove away. I waited 5 minutes to make sure he wasn't coming back, then got out of my truck. I'd brought everything I needed: a crowbar, a gallon of white paint, and a brush I'd been using for 20 years. The same brush that had painted hundreds of houses, that had put food on my table and clothes on my family's backs. Tonight, it was going to paint a different kind of message. The security camera above the back door had been mysteriously covered with spray paint earlier that day. Amazing what you could accomplish during a busy lunch hour when everyone was distracted. The lock on the gate protecting the car was good quality, but I'd been breaking into places since my Army days. Some skills you never forget. The Mustang sat in the darkness like a sleeping animal. In the dim light from the street, I could see my reflection in its perfect paint job. Liam had spent thousands of dollars and countless hours making this car flawless. It was his baby, his masterpiece, his pride and joy. It was about to become his nightmare. I started with the hood, writing in large white letters, "Home Wrecker." The paint stood out against the red like red paint on snow. Then I moved to the driver's side door. "Stay away from married women." The passenger side got, "Ask me about Ivy Locke," and across the rear window, "Adulterer." I stepped back to admire my work. In the morning, when Liam came to work, he'd find his precious car transformed into a rolling billboard advertising his sins. Every person in Millbrook would see it. Every customer, every friend, every woman he'd ever want to date again. But I wasn't finished. I used the crowbar to pop the hood, then located the oil drain plug. A few turns with the right tool, and Liam's pristine engine would be running dry by the time he made it to the end of the block. Not enough to destroy the motor immediately, but enough to cause expensive permanent damage. For the grand finale, I slashed all 4 tires. Not with a knife, that would be too obvious, too criminal. Instead, I used a small nail, the kind that might have been lying in the alley, the kind that could cause a slow leak that wouldn't be noticed until it was too late. By the time I was finished, Liam's pride and joy looked like it had been attacked by an army of angry wives, which, in a way, it had. I was packing up my supplies when I heard footsteps in the alley. "What the hell are you doing?" I turned around to find Caleb standing behind me, soaked from the rain and breathing hard like he'd been running. He was staring at the Mustang with his mouth open. "Hello, son. Out for a late-night walk?" "You can't do this, Dad. This is vandalism. It's illegal." "So is adultery, technically, at least in the moral sense." "This is crazy. You're acting crazy." I looked at my son, really looked at him. 3 days ago, he'd been willing to throw punches to defend the woman who'd destroyed our family. Now he looked like he hadn't slept in a week. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair unwashed, his eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion. "How's life treating you, Caleb? Got a new job yet?" "You know I don't. Nobody in this town will hire me now, thanks to you." "Thanks to me? I didn't make you sleep with my wife." "She's not your wife anymore." "No, she's not. But she was when you started sleeping with her." He flinched like I'd hit him. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like? Help me understand how my son decided to betray me for a woman who's been playing him like a fiddle." "You don't know anything about it. I know she's been screwing Liam here while she was screwing you. I know she's been laughing about both of you behind your backs. I know she never loved either of you. You were just entertainment while she figured out her next move." "That's not true." "Isn't it? When's the last time you heard from her, Caleb? When's the last time she returned your calls?" The expression on his face told me everything I needed to know. Ivy had cut him loose the moment the scandal broke, leaving him to face the consequences alone, while she moved on to her next victim. "She's scared," he said, but there was no conviction in his voice. "She needs time to figure things out." "She's done figuring, son. You were never part of her long-term plan. You were just a way to hurt me." "Why would she want to hurt you?" "Because I'm everything she's not. I'm loyal, I'm honest, and I work for what I have instead of trying to take it from other people. That kind of integrity makes people like Ivy feel small, so they try to destroy it." Caleb was quiet for a long moment, staring at the ruined car. Rain ran down his face like tears. "What am I supposed to do now?" he asked finally. "You're supposed to be a man. You're supposed to take responsibility for what you've done and try to make it right." "How? How do I make this right?" "You start by admitting that you were wrong. You apologize, not to me, but to yourself, for letting a woman turn you into someone you're not. Then you leave this town and start over somewhere else, somewhere people don't know what you did." "I can't leave. I don't have any money. I don't have a job." "I'll give you $5,000, I said. "Enough to get you to wherever you want to go and keep you alive until you find work. But you have to promise me something." "What?" "You never contact Ivy again. You never try to see her, never try to help her, never try to get back together with her. She's poison, Caleb. She'll destroy you if you let her." He was crying now, really crying, his shoulders shaking with the weight of everything he'd lost. "I loved her, Dad. I really thought I loved her. I know you did. That's what makes this so tragic." I reached into my jacket and pulled out an envelope with his name on it. Cash I'd withdrawn that afternoon. Money from the account Ivy no longer had access to. "Take it," I said. "Go somewhere warm. Find a job. Find a girl who deserves you. Find a life that doesn't involve destroying other people." He took the envelope with trembling hands. "What about you? What are you going to do?" "I'm going to finish what I started. Dad, please, just let it go. Move on. Be the bigger person." "I tried being the bigger person for 20 years, son. It got me a cheating wife and a backstabbing son. Now I'm going to try being the smaller person for a while, see how that works out." He looked like he wanted to say something else, but I was already walking away. I had one more stop to make before the night was over. Ivy was staying at Jenna's apartment, a cramped 2-bedroom above the pizza place on Main Street. I knew because I'd been watching, learning her new routine the same way I'd learned Liam's. I climbed the exterior stairs to the second floor and knocked on the door. It took several minutes and increasingly loud knocking before Jenna answered, wearing a bathrobe and a suspicious expression. "Darren? What are you doing here? It's almost 1 a.m. "I need to talk to Ivy. She's asleep, and she doesn't want to see you. I'm sure she doesn't, but she's going to anyway." I pushed past Jenna into the apartment. It smelled like takeout food and desperation. Ivy was sitting on the couch in pajamas, her hair unwashed, her face puffy from crying or drinking or both. "Hello, sweetheart," I said. "We need to talk." She looked up at me with an expression that mixed fear and defiance. "I have nothing to say to you." "That's fine. I'll do the talking." I sat down across from her, noting how she shrank back into the couch cushions. This wasn't the confident, manipulative woman who'd been playing games with my life. This was someone who'd been backed into a corner and was starting to realize that all her escape routes were closing. "I want you to know," I said, "that I'm not done with you yet." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means that destroying my family was the worst mistake you've ever made. It means that I'm going to make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of person you are. It means that your life here is over. You can't do this to me, Darren. I'm not some monster. I made mistakes, but nothing. You didn't make mistakes, Ivy. You made choices. You chose to cheat on me. You chose to seduce my son. You chose to humiliate me in my own home, in my own town, with my own family. I never meant for it to go this far." "What did you mean? What was the plan exactly? Keep screwing around until I was too old and broken to fight back? Take half my assets in a divorce and run off with one of your boyfriends?" She didn't answer, but I could see in her eyes that I'd guessed correctly. "Well, here's some news for you, sweetheart. I'm not too old, and I'm not too broken, and I'm definitely not too stupid to fight back. I'm going to destroy you the same way you tried to destroy me." "Darren, please." "Please what? Please forgive you? Please pretend this never happened? Please let you walk away without consequences?" I leaned forward, close enough that she could see the fury in my eyes. "You wanted to play games with people's lives, Ivy. Congratulations. You're about to find out what happens when you play those games with the wrong person." I stood up and walked toward the door. Behind me I could hear her starting to cry again, but I didn't look back. The night was far from over, and I had work to do. The call came at 6 a.m., jolting me awake from the first decent sleep I'd had in weeks. "Darren, it's Jim Morrison. We need to talk. Now." I sat up in bed, immediately alert. "What's wrong?" "Someone vandalized Liam Patterson's car last night, painted messages about adultery all over it, slashed the tires, damaged the engine. The police are calling it a hate crime." "That's terrible," I said, injecting just the right amount of concern into my voice. "Any idea who might have done something like that?" "Cut the shit, Darren. They have security footage from the building across the street. It's grainy, but it shows a figure matching your height and build working on the car around midnight. I'd checked for cameras on Liam's building, but hadn't thought about the surrounding businesses. That doesn't prove anything. It proves enough to get you arrested if Liam decides to press charges. And given what happened at the festival, you're going to be the prime suspect anyway. I was quiet for a moment, thinking fast. What do you recommend? I recommend you get down here right now so we can figure out how to keep you out of jail. An hour later, I was sitting in Jim's office, watching him pace back and forth like a caged animal. He'd already had 3 cups of coffee, and his hands were shaking slightly. This is bad, Darren, really bad. Vandalism, destruction of property, possibly intimidation and harassment. We're looking at serious charges here. What if Liam doesn't want to press charges? Why wouldn't he? You destroyed his car. Because pressing charges means a trial, and a trial means testimony, and testimony means everyone in the county hearing about how he was sleeping with a married woman. Jim stopped pacing and looked at me. You think he'll stay quiet to avoid the embarrassment? I think Liam Patterson cares more about his reputation than he does about justice. He's got a business to run, customers to keep happy. Having his personal life splashed across the local news isn't going to be good for either. That's a hell of a gamble. Everything's a gamble at this point. My phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized the voice immediately. You snake, Liam said without preamble. You destroyed my car. I'm sorry, who is this? Don't play games with me. I know it was you. I don't know what you're talking about, but if someone damaged your property, you should call the police. I did call the police. They're reviewing the security footage right now. Then I guess we'll see what they find. There was a pause. When Liam spoke again, his voice was quieter, more controlled. What do you want? I want you to stay away from my wife. Your ex-wife, you mean, and she's a grown woman who can make her own decisions. My ex-wife who's been playing you for a fool while she was screwing my son and God knows who else. Another pause, longer this time. You're lying. Am I? When's the last time you heard from her, Liam? When's the last time she returned your calls? Face it, buddy, you were just another mark in her game. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, processing what I'd said. Men like Liam, successful men with healthy egos, didn't like being told they'd been played. Even if that's true, he said finally, it doesn't give you the right to destroy my property. You're right, it doesn't, but it felt good anyway. The police are going to ask you a lot of questions about your relationship with Ivy. They're going to want details, dates, times, places. They're going to ask about the other men she was seeing. They're going to turn your private life inside out and put it on display for everyone to see. Are you threatening me? I'm explaining the situation. You press charges and this becomes a public circus. Your customers, your friends, your family, they're all going to know that you were sleeping with a married woman who was cheating on you with her stepson. Is that really the kind of publicity you want for your business? The silence stretched out for almost a minute. What do you want? He asked again. I want you to tell the police that you don't want to press charges. I want you to tell them it was probably just random vandalism, kids maybe, and that you'd prefer to handle it through insurance. And in return? In return, I leave you alone. No more midnight visits. No more property damage. No more interference in your life. We go our separate ways and pretend this never happened. How do I know you'll keep your word? Because I'm not interested in you, Liam. You were just collateral damage. My real target is Ivy, and she's got enough problems without me having to worry about you. Another long pause. I need to think about it. You've got until noon. After that, I can't guarantee what might happen to your other cars. I hung up before he could respond. Jim was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Jesus Christ, Darren. Did you just threaten him again? I negotiated with him. There's a difference. The police won't have a case if the victim doesn't want to press charges. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Caleb. Leaving town today. Thank you for the money. I'm sorry, Dad, for everything. I showed the message to Jim. One down. What about Ivy? Ivy's special. She gets the full treatment. That afternoon, I drove to Jenna's apartment building and waited in the parking lot. I'd been watching long enough to know that Ivy usually went out around 3 p.m. to buy cigarettes and whatever cheap wine was on sale at the corner store. She emerged right on schedule, looking like she'd been living rough. Her hair was greasy, her clothes wrinkled, and she moved with the careful precision of someone who'd been drinking since breakfast. I followed her to the store, keeping my distance, then approached her in the parking lot as she was getting back into Jenna's beat-up Honda. Hello, Ivy. She spun around, dropping her paper bag. A bottle of wine shattered on the asphalt, spreading red liquid. Darren, what do you want? I want to make you an offer. I don't want to hear it. $5,000. Cash. Enough to get you out of this town and start over somewhere else. She stared at me suspiciously. What's the catch? No catch. You take the money, you leave Millbrook, and you never come back. You don't contact me, you don't contact Caleb, you don't try to cause any more trouble for anyone. And if I don't take your offer? Then you stay here and face the consequences of what you've done. No money, no job prospects, no friends except Jenna, and she's getting tired of supporting you. How long do you think it'll be before she kicks you out? Ivy looked around the parking lot like she was searching for escape routes. This is my home too, Darren. I have a right to be here. You have the right to live anywhere you want, but you don't have the right to destroy people's lives without consequences. You made this town toxic for yourself, Ivy. I'm just offering you a way out. You can't make me leave. Can't I? Let's see. I could have a word with the landlord at every apartment complex in town. I could mention your situation to the managers at every business that might hire you. I could make sure that every person you meet knows exactly what kind of person you are. That's harassment. That's community service. I'm protecting innocent people from a predator. She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks in black streaks. I never meant for any of this to happen. But it did happen, and now you have to live with the consequences. I pulled an envelope from my jacket and held it out to her. Take the money, Ivy. Take it, and start over somewhere else. Find a town where nobody knows your history and try to be a better person. She stared at the envelope for a long moment, then snatched it from my hand. I hate you, she whispered. I know, but you'll thank me someday. She got in the car and drove away without another word. I watched her go, feeling something that might have been satisfaction or might have been sadness. My phone rang. It was Jim Morrison. Good news, he said. Liam Patterson just called the police and told them he doesn't want to press charges. Says it was probably just random vandalism and he'd rather handle it through insurance. That is good news. The cops aren't happy about it, but there's nothing they can do if the victim won't cooperate. So I'm in the clear? Legally, yes. Morally, he paused. That's between you and your conscience. That evening, I sat in my kitchen with a beer and the local newspaper. The front page had a story about the Harbor Festival incident, complete with photos from social media and quotes from witnesses. The headline read, Local family drama erupts at annual festival. My phone had been ringing all day with calls from reporters, neighbors, and people I barely knew who wanted to hear my side of the story. I'd ignored them all. There was a knock at my front door. I opened it to find Norma from the diner, holding a covered dish that smelled like heaven. Figured you might not be cooking much these days, she said, pushing past me into the house. Made you a casserole. You didn't have to do that. Course I did. That's what people do when their neighbors are going through hard times. She set the dish on my kitchen table and looked around the house. Quiet in here. Yeah, it is. You okay, honey? I thought about the question. Was I okay? My marriage was over, my relationship with my son was destroyed, and I'd spent the past week committing acts of vandalism and intimidation. By most measures, I should have been falling apart. but I felt better than I had in months. The constant tension was gone, the uncertainty was over, and I was finally free to be myself again. "Yeah," I said. "I think I am okay." "Good. Because you did the right thing, exposing those people for what they are. This town's better off without that kind of poison." After Norma left, I sat on my front porch and watched the sunset over Millbrook Harbor. Tomorrow, I'd start painting the Henderson house on Maple Street. Next week, I had 3 more jobs lined up. Life would go on the way it always did. My phone buzzed with one last text message of the day. It was from an unknown number. "You win. I'm leaving tonight. Don't try to find me." I deleted the message and put the phone away. Ivy was gone, Caleb was gone, and Liam had learned his lesson. The people who'd tried to destroy my life had been neutralized, and I was still standing. For the first time in 20 years, I was truly free, and it felt good. 3 weeks later, I was putting the finishing touches on the Henderson house when I saw the black sedan pull up to the curb. 2 men in cheap suits got out and walked toward me with the deliberate pace of people who were used to delivering bad news. "Darren Locke?" The taller one flashed a badge. "Detective Martinez, Maine State Police. This is Detective Wilson. We'd like to ask you a few questions." I climbed down from my ladder, wiping paint from my hands with an old rag. "What can I do for you, officers?" "We're investigating the disappearance of Ivy Locke. When's the last time you saw your wife?" "Ex-wife," I corrected. "And it's been about 3 weeks. She moved out after our divorce was finalized." "Do you know where she went?" "No idea. She didn't leave a forwarding address." Detective Wilson, the shorter one with the receding hairline, pulled out a notebook. "We understand there was some domestic tension before she left." "That's one way to put it. I caught her cheating on me with my son. Things got complicated after that." "Complicated how?" I gave them the whole story. The discovery at Caleb's apartment, the confrontation at the Harbor Festival, the divorce proceedings. I told them about Ivy's drinking, her erratic behavior, her threats to make me pay for humiliating her publicly. "She was pretty unstable those last few weeks," I said. "Staying with friends, calling me at all hours, making wild accusations. I think the stress of everything finally got to her." "What kind of accusations?" "She claimed I was harassing her, following her around town, threatening her. Complete nonsense, of course. I was too busy trying to put my life back together to waste time on revenge fantasies." The detectives exchanged a look. Martinez consulted his own notebook. "We have reports that you vandalized the car belonging to Liam Patterson, one of your wife's associates." "I heard about that. Terrible thing. But Mr. Patterson decided not to press charges, didn't he? Probably realized it was just random vandalism." "You didn't have anything to do with that?" "Officers, I'm a 45-year-old house painter with arthritis in my knees and a bad back from 20 years of climbing ladders. You think I'm sneaking around town in the middle of the night vandalizing cars? I'm usually in bed by 10 p.m. with a heating pad and a bottle of Advil." Wilson scribbled something in his notebook. "What about your son? When's the last time you spoke to Caleb?" "About a month ago. He left town after everything came out. Said he was ashamed of what he'd done and wanted to start over somewhere else. Can't say I blame him." "Do you know where he went?" "No, and I don't want to know. What he did, that's not something a father forgives easily." Martinez leaned against his car. "Mr. Locke, I'm going to be straight with you. Your ex-wife's friends are concerned. She was supposed to meet someone for lunch last Tuesday and never showed up. Her car was found abandoned at the bus station, but there's no record of her buying a ticket. Her bank accounts haven't been touched, her phone goes straight to voicemail, and nobody's heard from her. Maybe she hitched a ride with someone. Maybe she's laying low until things cool down. Ivy was always dramatic. This sounds like exactly the kind of stunt she'd pull to get attention. Or maybe someone wanted her gone permanently." The words hung in the air between us. I could feel both detectives watching my reaction, looking for tells, waiting for me to slip up and reveal something incriminating. "Officers," I said. I understand why you'd look at me as a suspect. Cheating wife, public humiliation, messy divorce, it's textbook motive. But the truth is, I was relieved when Ivy left town. My life got a lot quieter and a lot simpler. Why would I risk that by doing something stupid? People do stupid things when they're angry, Wilson said. I was angry, but I'm not stupid. And I'm certainly not desperate enough to throw my life away over a woman who wasn't worth the trouble to begin with. Martinez handed me a business card. If you hear from her, or if you remember anything that might help us locate her, give us a call. Of course. I watched them drive away, then climbed back up my ladder and returned to painting. The Henderson house was going to be beautiful when I was finished. A soft yellow with white trim, the kind of cheerful color that made people smile when they drove past. That evening, I sat in my kitchen and thought about the detective's visit. They were fishing, hoping I'd panic and say something incriminating. But there was nothing to incriminate me for because I hadn't done anything wrong. Well, almost nothing. The truth was, Ivy had left town exactly the way I'd told the police, voluntarily, with cash in her pocket and a clear understanding that she wasn't welcome in Millbrook anymore. What I hadn't mentioned was our final conversation, the one that took place 2 days after I'd given her the money. She'd called me from a payphone somewhere in Massachusetts, drunk and furious and full of threats about what she was going to do when she came back. "You think you've won," she'd slurred into the phone. "You think you can just pay me off and make me disappear. But I'm coming back, Darren. I'm coming back with lawyers and reporters and anyone else who'll listen to my story about how you destroyed my life. Ivy, you're drunk. Go sleep it off. I'm going to tell everyone what you really are. I'm going to tell them about the vandalism, the threats, the way you terrorized me and Caleb. I'm going to make sure you lose everything, just like you made me lose everything." "You didn't lose anything, Ivy. You threw it all away." "Screw you, Darren. Screw you and your self-righteous bullshit. You're not the victim here. I am, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it." She'd hung up before I could respond, but her message was clear. She was planning to come back, to cause more trouble, to try to destroy what was left of my reputation and my peace of mind. That's when I'd made the call. I had a friend from my Army days, a guy named Tony Ricci, who'd settled in Boston after his discharge. Tony wasn't exactly what you'd call law-abiding, but he was loyal to the people who'd served with him, and he owed me a favor from a long time ago. "I need someone to disappear," I'd told him. "Not permanently, just relocated, somewhere far away where she can't cause any more problems." "This about your wife's situation?" "Ex-wife. And yes, she dangerous? Only to my sanity." Tony had laughed. "I know some people who specialize in that kind of problem. Costs money, though." "How much?" 10 grand, cash. And she gets a new identity, new social security number, new everything, like she never existed in the first place." It was a lot of money, but I had it. The divorce settlement had been generous in my favor thanks to Ivy's infidelity, and I'd been saving for years. "Can you guarantee she won't come back?" "Let's put it this way. She'll be strongly encouraged to start a new life somewhere else. And if she ever gets homesick, well, accidents happen." 3 days later, Ivy Locke had vanished from a bus station in Springfield, Massachusetts. Her car was found in the parking lot, her purse on the front seat, no signs of struggle or foul play. Just another woman who'd decided to disappear and start over. The police would investigate for a while, interview her friends and family, check her credit cards and phone records. Eventually, they'd conclude that she'd left voluntarily, probably to escape the shame and embarrassment of her situation in Millbrook. The case would go cold, and life would move on. I finished my beer and went to bed, sleeping better than I had in months. Outside, the Maine wind rattled my windows and carried the smell of salt air and new beginnings. The next morning, I had coffee with Norma at the diner. She was full of gossip about the police investigation, the theories people had about what had happened to Ivy. "Some folks think she just ran off," she said, refilling my cup. "Others think something bad happened to her. What do you think, honey? I think Ivy was always good at causing drama, even when she wasn't trying to. This is probably just her final performance. You don't seem too worried about her. Should I be? She made her choices, Norma. If she's in trouble now, it's trouble of her own making. Still, she was your wife for 20 years. That's got to count for something. I thought about that. 20 years of marriage, of shared meals and shared beds and shared dreams. 20 years of believing I knew someone, only to discover I'd been living with a stranger. It counts for something, I said finally, but not enough to lose sleep over. That afternoon, I started work on a new project, painting the interior of the community center where the Harbor Festival had taken place. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was literally covering up the scene of my public humiliation with fresh paint and new colors. As I worked, I thought about second chances and clean slates, about how sometimes you had to destroy something completely before you could rebuild it properly. My phone rang around 4 p.m. Unknown number, but I answered it anyway. Darren, it's Caleb. I almost dropped the phone. Where are you calling from? Arizona, Phoenix. I got a job at a construction company out here, and I'm taking night classes at the community college. That's good, son. I'm glad you're getting your life together. Dad, I heard about Ivy, about her disappearing. The police called me, asked if I knew where she might have gone. What did you tell them? The truth. That I hadn't talked to her since everything happened. That she was pretty messed up the last time I saw her. Good. There was a long pause. Dad, do you think something bad happened to her? I think Ivy was always good at landing on her feet. She's probably fine, just laying low until the heat fades down. But what if she's not? What if someone hurt her? Then that's on her, Caleb. She played dangerous games with dangerous people. If those games caught up with her, well, that's the risk you take when you live that kind of life. That's pretty cold, Dad. It's realistic. Ivy made her choices and now she's living with the consequences, just like you're living with yours and I'm living with mine. Do you ever think about forgiving her or forgiving me? I stopped painting and really considered the question. Did I forgive them? Could I forgive them? I think forgiveness is overrated, I said finally. What matters is moving on, building something better, learning from your mistakes. You're doing that, Caleb. I'm proud of you for that. But you don't forgive me. I don't think about you enough anymore to hold a grudge. You're my son and I love you, but you're not part of my life anymore. Maybe someday that'll change, but not today. After I hung up, I went back to painting. The community center was going to be beautiful when I was finished. Warm earth tones that would make people feel welcome and comfortable. A place where families could gather and create new memories. That evening, I drove out to the harbor and sat on the dock where Ivy and I used to walk when we were first married. The water was calm, reflecting the lights from the town like scattered stars. I thought about Detective Martinez's words. Maybe someone wanted her gone permanently. Maybe someone had. Maybe that someone was me. Maybe I'd finally gotten tired of being the victim in my own life and decided to take control of the narrative. Or maybe Ivy really had just run away, like she'd always run away from her problems. Maybe she was somewhere in California or Florida or Canada, starting over with a new name and a new story about why she was alone. It didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that she was gone. Caleb was gone. And I was free to build whatever life I wanted in the space they'd left behind. I drove home through the quiet streets of Millbrook, past houses I'd painted and lives I'd helped improve with my work. This was my town, my community, my home. I'd earned the right to be here through 23 years of honest labor and decent living. Nobody was going to take that away from me. Not Ivy, not Caleb, not anyone. At home, I poured myself a drink and sat on my front porch, watching the stars come out over Maine. Tomorrow, I'd finish the community center. Next week, I had 3 more houses to paint. Life would go on, the way it always did. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Package delivered. Customer satisfied with relocation services. Account closed. I deleted the message and put the phone away. Some conversations were better forgotten, some transactions better left unrecorded. The night was peaceful, the kind of quiet that only came when all your problems had been solved and all your enemies had been neutralized. I finished my drink and went inside, locking the door behind me. In the morning, I'd start fresh. New day, new projects, new possibilities. But tonight, I was content to sit in the silence and appreciate the simple pleasure of a life lived on my own terms. For the first time in 20 years, I was exactly where I wanted to be, and that was worth any price I'd had to pay to get here.